it's a very strange year. We haven't been able to have our district meetings here in the state. I actually have gone to a couple of different areas in the state because they are small rural areas, don't have the huge COVID things. So I've actually been able to go to a couple of district meetings, which has been wonderful. We have not been hit quite as hard out here in Sherman County where I am. We are on our 19th case total right now. So we've locked down our property in the beginning. We made sure that nobody got in or out, took care of our tenants. We have arranged food deliveries. In the last month, we have had so much food delivered that I think my tenants are starting to get overwhelmed and say, stop. Honestly, we had a donation 3 weeks ago from Walmart. I had to go pick up. There were 72 racks of barbecue ribs. Everybody got ribs. I donated ribs to the sheriff's department because we had more ribs than we had people that wanted them. So amazing stuff happening here in our little community through COVID. We're making it through. So far,
Fabulous.
everybody is good and safe. So
fabulous. Well done.
I hope other communities are seeing the same and getting some of the same stuff done.
Yep.
Why? Why did you decide to serve, other than Carl picking you out of the group? Why did you decide to do this?
You know, I think back to my very first national NAHRO conference was in Atlanta. And I remember sitting in the back of the room, and it was when, gosh, it's been probably 15 years ago, I would say. And just being amazed at the organization itself. You know, just sitting back there and seeing all the people and the camaraderie and people really greeting each other and loving each other and sharing information. And I felt at home there. And it also pairs with the fact that I think that a lot of folks in housing, if you stick around in housing, you have a servant's heart, right? I mean, you have the heart of a servant, and you just do what needs to be done to move the work forward. And I felt this beautiful alignment at that first NAHRO conference of like, I can make a difference here. Of course, I wasn't thinking I could be president, but I was thinking, you know, I could make a difference here. This feels like home to me. And it aligns with something I'm passionate about, being housing. So it just was a really, really good fit. And that's why NAHRO for me, I mean, it's family. It provides that opportunity for servant leadership that is one of my core values. And so it just really is a strong fit. You know, and Sheila, I could ask the same thing of you. Why NAHRO? What interests you about NAHRO?
The people, the camaraderie, like you mentioned, the fact that I've been doing this it's the only thing I know how to do is housing. I had a very good leader or very good teacher when I was very young. My dad was a truck driver. He used to go, and when his work partners would leave stuff in their trucks, he would take the blankets or take the shirts and take the clothes and take them home. My stepmom would wash them, and then he would drop them off to the homeless that he would meet on his route. So I learned how to serve very early. And when I got into housing, having no clue there was even such a thing as public housing, it was just the right fit. I tell my tenants when they thank me for doing something for them, without them, we wouldn't have jobs. Without having someone that needs us, we wouldn't be needed. So getting into leadership in Kansas NAHRO, when Tina first asked me, one of my very good friends still works at the Salina Housing Authority, and she said, take your big mouth and go make the needs be heard. Get on that small agency task force, because you're going to make sure that people know what you need, because you're not afraid to talk about it. Good support from everybody in Kansas. Tina, Sherry, and Roxy, and Nat, they're all, you know, we have such a good group that it makes being the leader easy, and it makes serving on the Southwest committees, serving on the national committees, even easier to at least get our voice out there. We here in Sherman County with 84 units and surrounded by small housing authorities with some of them as small as 13 or 10 units, we need to have somebody that'll speak up for those people as well. Not that the big housing authorities are bad, because they're not, but it's just different.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I think it's beautiful that they're able to say you have a big mouth. I I don't. I would just say I think that you're not afraid to use your voice, which is
Not
really
afraid at all. No,
yeah,
never have been.
yeah, that's good.
So how do you or I, as leaders in NAHRO, both at the national and at a state level, how do we get other people involved? How do we go to other people and say, this is what you need to be doing? Come join us in the fun.
You know, you preach the gospel in NAHRO, right? I mean, you talk about it everywhere you go. It really is a family. I mean, that's the thing that I try to get across to people first and foremost. I've never had a stronger support system than I've had in my colleagues in this organization, and people who were colleagues that became friends, right? And so
Right.
that's just a beautiful and amazing thing. But how do you get people like encouraged? Because, you know, I spoke last week to some folks from a small agency, and they said, well, my agency doesn't have capacity for me to serve. They weren't, you know, executive director level. And I said, that's understandable. I mean, because first and foremost, agencies have to look at budget. And just because you want to serve doesn't mean you can serve.
Right.
But when you talk with your leadership, you may be able to serve at the state level. You may be able to serve on a committee. You may be able to serve then at the regional level and start to just grow it that way. That's the appropriate way to grow it anyway, is state, regional, national. And, you know, I can tell you that the relationships that I've developed are things unlike anything I've experienced, anything at all. Friendships that I'll carry with me for my entire life. And so aside from the work aspect of it, it's the relationships. It really is about the relationships and how important they are. And I got to tell you, the work aspect of it, I've had colleagues that have helped me do some pretty dang cool things here in my town that I never would have imagined we could have done. And so because of NAHRO, but for NAHRO, I wouldn't have known about those things to come back to my community and do. It's just been incredible. So I'm going to volley it back to you. Sheila, your question?
I try to make sure that if we have new directors in the state, that I'm contacting them, I'm sending them an email, or I'm giving them a call. I see Ty is on here. I don't see if Mark from Lindsborg is on. Yep, Mark is on here as well. Both of them were relatively new directors, and I went to them and said, be your district rep. Start at the bottom. They've been coming to NAHRO conferences, doing some training. Start at as the district rep, and let's move you up, but get new people involved. I know you and I, Sherry, some of us are seeing some of our older generation, and I'm not being rude or anything there, but we're seeing people. I know, Sherry, you're in mine, so we're okay. We're losing some of the people that have been in this business for the longest that we all learned from. So now we're at a point where we've got to get those coming in, the younger generation, or just the newer directors involved in serving, even if it's just starting as your district rep and getting meetings going and then moving up.
Absolutely. We've got to get the next generation of leaders coming in. Absolutely.
I felt like when Tina asked me to be NAHRO president, I'm in the far northwest corner of the state. I have a small agency. There's not even anybody around here. How can I lead our state? And then, of course, COVID came along, and then I had, how can I lead our state? But we're doing what we can, and with great support as a family, like you said, we've all made it through. So
that's right.
That's how I got here. Do we have any questions from the crowd? I'm looking on the chat room. I don't see anything yet. Is there anything else, Sunny, that you want to talk about? Tell us what's going to happen next year, or what's your plan for next year?
And then what's going to happen next year? What do if I had out my crystal ball, gosh, honestly, Sheila, I don't see us going to DC. I don't see that happening.
I'm afraid you're right.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. You know, NAHRO didn't have a summer conference scheduled anyway because we were moving away from summer. So that's why I say, gosh, I hope I get to see you all at Phoenix at the end of my
I
term.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. So what I think is going to be happening with NAHRO next year, you know, we've been talking about some really cool ideas that in our strategic planning advisory committee. So I can't disclose those yet, but there's some really kind of like earth-shaking ideas to impact agencies and families that we serve in a cool way. If we can wrap our brains around this idea and bring it out to you, that would be super cool. You know, but as far as this next year, I really think it's going to be really working to make sure that we're all connected and that we don't drift apart and lose sight of why this organization is so important, right? Because if we go a couple years without being able to see each other, then dues for any of the organizations show up on your desk and you're like, I haven't been anyway, no big deal. No big deal, didn't miss it, right? The bottom line is though, you do miss it. You just don't know what you're missing, right? Because that next big idea might be shared there. I mean, at NAHRO, I learned and became a part of an organization where now I get almost $5,000 in children's books every year to disperse to my children. At NAHRO, I started first, you know, meeting with Move to Work colleagues and thinking, I could apply for Move to Work, and I did, and we were accepted. I mean, all of these things are but for NAHRO. So I want to make sure we're keeping people connected, state, region, and national, so that we recognize that there's value. That's my big goal over this next year, is so that people still recognize that there's value in your membership and in your family. And we look forward to you coming to the family reunion. So, you know, in Phoenix.
Yes.
But what's on your plan for the last part of your term?
Pray.
I hear you, sister.
We had in our meeting yesterday, we discussed we are going to go ahead and plan to have a conference in the spring. Until the day comes that we have to change our mind. We are still going to plan to have a conference in March in Salina, so that we can all be together and do that family reunion thing and do some face-to-face training. If nothing else, some face-to-face networking. Sometimes I think the training is wonderful because we get the newest and the latest, but that network after the sessions where you can share your stories and have someone else say, yeah, I had the same thing happen and this is what we did. Sometimes I think that's as important as the training. So we are going forward hoping that we are going to have a spring conference. We're going to work on getting some online conference training scheduled, just some standalones, so that we don't lose touch with what's going on. I will say, being on the small agency committee through national and the LegNet committee at the national level, with those conference calls and stuff that we have done we started 2 or 3 times a week in the beginning, and then now we're down to about once a month because things have kind of leveled out and there's not a lot of changes, but those have been some of the most informative and have kept me from just running away screaming on some days. Knowing that there's other people out there, knowing that NAHRO had our backs and was in touch with what was going on with Washington and keeping us all informed. So that's kind of where we're going to move forward next year and hope for the best.
Well, I hope that
not a whole lot else.
If you so decide, I would love to join you in Kansas next year.
We will have you on our call list to make sure you're there. March 15th through the 17th. Mark it down.
Okay. Very cool.
Okay. 5 minutes left. Are there any questions, Michael, from the group, or any final words?
I haven't seen any in the chat section.
Great.
Gosh, Sunny, we did good. Nobody had anything. We told them everything.
I guess so. It's just early there, right? They're looking forward to their full day of learning.
Yes.
Just to kind of give a quick roadmap for looking on, our next session is at 9:15. with Maisha Carr from HUD on an update on COVID and HUD. So make sure you're there here in about 15 minutes for that session. Then at 10 o'clock, we have our opening general session with a wonderful keynote speaker, Jose Falls. I look forward to hearing from him. I've read a lot of good things, so you want to make sure you're there. For those of y'all who are playing the game, I'm going to throw up the game code for the virtual event. If you are the competitive person, make sure that you check out the virtual challenge. It's on your main menu and on the left-hand side. Each session you go to, you'll get a game code, put that in there, get points, and let's see who's #1 in Kansas NAHRO. Not to be too competitive, but that's kind of what we have lined up. We have a lot of great sessions, some amazing speakers from all over our NAHRO family is going to be here. I mean, later on today, we'll have Patricia Wells, our Senior VP of NAHRO. We have Georgie, we have Tess, all kinds of amazing speakers. Our own Sheila and Sunny are also speaking. So then we also make sure you go and visit the virtual exhibit hall. We'll have a prime time at right after the general session at 11, where you can click on the links on their profile pages and talk to them face to face. So it's going to be a jam-packed day full of fun, networking, getting to see one another. But a big thank you to Sunny and Sheila for amazing Rise and Shine with Kansas NAHRO. We thank you so much for opening up and sharing your journey and just continuing to be inspirational people in our leadership.
Thank you, Sunny, for joining us. I miss your face. I hope I see you soon. Thank you to Michael and Shelley and their group for getting us going this bright and early morning. And I will see you all in the next session.